Next up in my weapon videos is going to be Annie's weapon. I'm covering this directly after Salma's weapon, mostly because Annie is, alongside Salma, the only, currently obtainable at least, female synergy commander weapon that is purchasable in the store. You can get Layla's through the archery contest also, but that is significantly more expensive to guarantee getting. So Salma and Annie are sort of in direct competition for mid-spenders, at least, if they are of that synergy. So I'm going to go into all the specifics of Annie's weapon and what it's going to be bringing you. Is it worth it? The practical, realistic expectations of the recasting effect, and pretty much everything I can think of. So first of all, Annie's base 4-star. Every time she casts her active ability, it will directly wipe out 3% of the target's currently deployed troops, and that value cannot exceed 3% of your own. This effect will then be increased at every stage of the weapon, so it will gain plus 0.2% on both the troops it wipes out and the limit of your own troops that can be the maximum effectiveness. So it goes to 3.2, then 3.4, 3.6, 3.8, and then finally 4% at 4-star. There will also be, on unlock of the weapon, a new effect added to this. So if the target is inflicted with the disarm status, there is a 40% chance to cast the effect on the target troops again. Again, this scales up to 100% at 4-star, starts at 40, then 50, 60, 70, and then 100%. As you level it up. This damage effect is fairly unique in the female synergy in terms of how it deals damage, because it is exempt from counter bonuses. So even though Annie is a spear commander, this will do the same damage effectively to infantry, to cavalry, to spearmen, doesn't matter. And it's also exempt from the dilution of commander damage when there are multiple lines. So if you're running 3 or 4 troop types in a fight, your commander damage will be significantly reduced by that due to the formula of how commander damage is calculated, but Annie's effect will remain the same amount of damage throughout regardless. So proportionally, it will perform better in mixed troop lineups. If you're running something like Spear Cav or Inf Cav, and you have means of continuously reprocking Annie's ability like Layla, she will actually be slightly better in that situation than other things that are purely built upon commander damage specifically. So if we look at some of the analysis I've done on this, I've effectively converted this number here, the base 3%, to equivalent damage coefficient. So similar to how with Salma, we saw it do 100% as a damage coefficient at base, and then it went up to 115%, 130%, and so on. I've created coefficient comparisons here for this, just for the means of comparisons, just so we can put a value approximately on each level gained for this weapon will actually give you. And as I list here, from a few tests I've done, in the scenario of a rebel group test at least, so that is a solo march with similar numbers on either side, with no F5 commanders, because things like Cersei will hugely spike up the amount of damage you're getting from active abilities. No Layla weapon either. It was averaging for me about 10% of the damage coming from commander actives. This number is not gospel at all. It will vary because of a lot of factors. So if you don't want to trust that specifically, that's fine. I'm just using it to give a frame of reference to roughly approximate the value of this. So the test scenarios of this, if I show here, here's a female lineup with Drake tagged on at the end. I tried to balance as much as possible the commander active counter multipliers. So you have 2 spears that are going neutral here, 2 cav that are getting countered, and then Arya who counters, but because of her 4-star ability, my theory at least is she counts closer towards 2 infantry commanders, just as a best case testing situation. So if we look here and compare the Commander Awakening damage, which is only Annie in this situation, to the Active Army skill, it's a little bit less than 10% of the Active Army skill damage. We go up, look at it at infantry, it's a bit higher, and it will just keep varying a little bit higher, a little bit lower. It's hard to put a specific number to it, but it's somewhere around that 10% damage ballpark. And it's obviously just impossible to put a specific number to, because if you have, say, 5 cavalry commanders here, and they're all doing cavalry damage off the active castings, that's obviously going to do significantly more damage because it's an infantry frontline. So there are just so many variables here that the maths are somewhat impossible. It's all just a rough idea. So the maths I'm going to do here is putting a approximate value to the damage you're going to be gaining from this plus 0.2% on her ability every time you get a star or unlock the weapon itself. So these maths are built up from Layla without weapon and a female commander that will, on average, be 6.36 actives across a fight for a female commander. The base active damage coefficient is 260% at a 4-star gold commander. So when you times that by the amount of active castings, it is about 1,653.6% commander damage from the fight. This will, of course, be assuming you're in mono formation, so the commander damage isn't diluted at all. And then if we take that 10% number of what it was approximately doing and compare that to this number here, Annie in this scenario in a 5-commander lineup is obviously 20% of commander damage, and then 10% of the commander damage was what I was getting from Annie's ability. So we're going to take half of this and assume it's approximately the damage we're getting from Annie's 4-star. And through that maths, you can approximately assign the value of about 826.8% commander damage, or 3.18 commander actives in terms of damage output coming from Annie's base 4-star ability. That number will then increase as the weapon gains levels, because of course the percentage is going up, and you'll see a correlation here of it jumping about 0.2 times on the active values here. So this is about 3.2 to 3.4 to about 3.6, 3.8, 4, 4.2. It's a little higher, a little lower here and there, but that's the general trend. So as a rough estimate, it says here, every stage of the weapon that you improve per star will provide a damage increase of approximately 0.2 times additional active casts, which is approximately 52% commander damage per star you get. So as I list here, before the recast interactions, which you get off Disarms, this is significantly worse than what we were getting from Salma, just purely in what the investment to improving the weapon from, say, 0 to 1 star, the BD spent to use that on Salma's weapon will give you more value than it will give you with Annie's weapon in a vacuum. That is until we get to these recast effects. So, as I list here, the recast effect is a lot better than Salma's recast effect. So, as I said in the Salma video, getting Salma's weapon to actually trigger this reproc effect is very difficult, because the practical situations to actually defeat a troop with that 1 second active cast is basically impossible in any normal fight. Whereas with Annie's weapon, we find out all you need is to have it 4-star and then hit something that's disarmed, and you will 100% recast that ability. I'm not entirely sure if this can then be Layla reprocced again. If it can, that is insane. I don't know if anyone has this and can answer that in the comments, because that is quite an interesting thing to note, and that would gain a lot of value if the reproc can be then reprocced again by Layla. But the question then is, how much can we guarantee getting value from this, and basically how much value or how many disarms onto Annie's opposing lineup can we actually get? And that is a very important qualifier. So, as I say here, there are 3 methods of disarms in the game right now. Daenerys, Cersei, and Margaery's 4-star abilities. I've seen, at least in my own Alliance Discord, the idea of Daenerys 4-star having synergy with this. It doesn't at all. So, as I say here, Daenerys disarms off her own active cast, and if she's on the A1 lineup, she'll cast her active on the opposite A1 lineup. So if we find Daenerys's ability, we go here, find her 4-star. So it says, reduce her active army skill cooldown, blah blah blah. Each use has an 80% chance to put the target under the disarmed status for 4 seconds. So it's very specifically what is being targeted by her own active cast. And then if we go back and look at one of these reports, just as a rough example, see here, column 3, Layla targeted enemy A3 lineup. So it's our third column targets their third column. So what this means is it's not possible for Daenerys to disarm the lineup that's opposite to Annie. You need disarms that can affect Annie's lineup very specifically. When Daenerys' weapon comes out, if you've watched my Daenerys weapon video, this will change totally, because Daenerys' disarm becomes AoE effectively, and you can, as you see, when we click Full Stars Preview, you'll hit 2 random front row enemies, rather than just the target that Daenerys' active itself hits directly. So Daenerys has no synergy with Annie's weapon at all. Maybe that's common sense, but I have seen some people not realize this. This means that only Cersei and Margaery can cause Annie's weapon to reproc active casts. So Margaery, as I stated in my video very specifically on her, this is an issue because she only can disarm male commanders. I find her here. So only after Marge's own active cast. This isn't for every female commander. Only after Margaery's own active casts. There's a 50% chance to inflict the disarm status on one lineup of a random enemy male commander. So this is a problem because you only target males, so all female synergy commanders, this can't target. Everything listed here, which is like half the commanders in the game, which is a problem. Then weakness synergy, you can't disarm them when they're in the state of weakness attacking, which is 100% uptime after like 11 to 14 seconds. If you have the healing enablers, if you have their weapons, it will be even less than that if they have Hector as well. So pretty much everything here is off the table as well. And then even with the bleed lineup, Synara's female, Rhea's female, they'll be in every single bleed lineup no matter what. Plus you also have Andrea, Lats. So there's just very little things for Margaery to realistically disarm. And even if you can disarm stuff, like a bleed build with Kevin and John and Patello or something like that, it's still then RNG based off a 50% chance when she uses her own actives. Plus you have to hit a 20% chance of it choosing Annie's opposing lineup. If it hits, say, your Layla's lineup, if it's your Salma's lineup that they're facing into, the disarm then won't have any synergy with Annie at all. So there's a lot of things that have to go your way for Margaery to actually cause these reprocs. The one thing that you will get guaranteed value of this from will be Cersei. The reason for this is Cersei will hit all lineups, so when your commanders use their active skills, there'll be a 20% chance of casting Wildfire, dealing 20% damage to all enemies. The normal attacks of enemies hit by Wildfire will have a 20% chance of missing their target. So there are still luck elements here with the 20% chance, but the fact it hits everything will guaranteed hit Annie's lineup with a disarm status when it does go off. The one issue of this you're going to have to manage is you very specifically need Wildfire to go off before Annie uses her own active. So if Annie uses her active first, for example, at like 11 seconds, and it hits into something, and then Layla casts hers, Salma casts hers, Cersei casts hers, and then you get 1 or 2 Wildfire procs after Annie has already hit, the disarms will be applied afterwards. So that does no good for you effectively. So the trick to this will be if you're running Annie with weapon, you're going to want to put her in the 5th column for slower active sequencing. So if we look at a report again, this isn't the case every single time, but it should be the 1st column caster active, then 2nd, then 3rd, then 4th, then 5th. And you will notice a trend of, at worst, the 5th column casting last. So you see here with the enemy, it's column 1, then column 2, then column 3, then column 4, then column 5. When you look through reports, this isn't always the case, as you see with column 1, column 2, column 4 here after all this. But it's a general trend that will at least give you the best case scenario. Like here it's 1, then 2, then 4, then 1. So it's 5th is right at the end here after all the 1 recast, the 3 recasts. So putting Annie in that 5th spot will give you the best chance of things being disarmed. Again, here with the enemy, it's column 1, then column 2, then column 3, then column 4, then 5. So when you set up your female lineup, you're going to want to put here in this 5th column, Annie in that spot there, like this. And then hopefully you're going to maximize your chances of these 4 disarming with wildfire. And then Annie will hit in, and then it will have the maximum chance to reproc off her weapon. I hope that makes sense. And because of this, with Cersei being by far the best and most guaranteed disarm status for Annie to reproc after, I would only really expect value from Annie's weapon if you have 4-star Cersei, to be honest, or in future 4-star Daenerys when she gets her weapon released as well. But you'd need that high star to get value out of that also. But 4-star Cersei will be the enabler to this weapon, so it becomes very high budget, and realistically, I don't think this weapon is very good for mid-spenders, because it's going to be 100 to roll stats on it. You're going to want to chase base attack, and you'll be able to get all 4 base attacks on it. And if you want to make that just 1 unit type, it'll be 250 to roll. So if you're running a full female lineup, it would realistically be better to just throw on like a different weapon that you just get base attack on in that spot instead. So if you're running Imp, you can have Oath, you can have Needle, you can have Haley's Axe, maybe Sonara weapon, Lat's weapon. I just think base attack will take priority. You could unlock it and try and roll a base attack on it, but in terms of what you'd be getting from the improvements of the ability itself, it won't be worth the money you're investing on it at all, in my opinion. She's also in quite a limited spot because of that, so you want to be running her with 4-star Cersei. If you're in the budget of 4-star Cersei, though, you might just have better options, because you have to run Layla, you have to run Salma, you have to run Cersei. If you have Daenerys, you have to run Daenerys, and then she's sort of competing with Sanel for that last spot. But fitting her in is just quite tricky, to be honest. For mid-spenders in a vacuum, I'd say Salma weapon is better. It's on a better commander, is a better effect. It's more generally used. When pairing with a 4-star Cersei, however, Annie weapon will be better there. It's just fitting Annie in, because there are, in all likelihood, good alternatives to Annie in that 4th, 5th spot in your lineup. And it will also be much harder to buy Annie's weapon and get a good base attack on it compared to what it would be to Salma's weapon, unless you're running, say, Spear female, and being able to roll that Spear base attack will actually have value compared to the Cav attack being fairly irrelevant to you on the Salma weapon. So TLDR is, the damage increase is absolutely terrible, but it's basically negligible to the point of it basically being irrelevant. The recast effect is actually very good, but it requires 4-star Cersei to actually enable it, so it's a very high budget interaction that's hidden behind the allure of a more low budget item.